Well, howdy folks, here we are again. We're just about done with the front bank. I've changed all the shims, ready to put the camshafts back in. And someone did ask a question about how to actually turn the crank. It's not a special tool, it's just an 8mm hex. That's the crank, that's the actual timing reluctor wheel. So that picks up the position of the crankshaft at all times, and you can see there's an actual gap right there. That's how the computer can tell precisely where the crankshaft is located at all times. So that's how we turn the crank. Okay, so I have had a few questions about the math in calculating the proper shim sizes. So let's take a quick little look here. So these are the measured valve clearances, and when I say clearance, what I'm referring to is we've got a valve stem here like this, we've got a shim here, and we've got a bucket that goes over the top of the shim. The cam is like this, like that, and the center of the cam is right there. So as it spins, this lobe section pushes down on the valve, and the spring is right there. So it's that tiny little gap that we're concerned about in there. Because as I mentioned, when this valve gets hot, not only does it expand this way, it also expands this way. And we want to have a little room for expansion in there. That room for expansion is 10 to 15, 0.01 to 0.15 for the inlet valves, and 0.2 to 0.25 on the exhaust valves. And part of the reason for that increased clearance on the exhaust valves is they get hotter. They get hotter, so they need to expand more. So we can see that these ones are all within spec. We already knew that. These ones are only just barely within spec. These ones are outside. These ones are supposed to be 10 to 15, so we've got bad, okay, good, and good. And of course the exhausts on the front bank were not so good. 0.28, 0.3, 0.28, 0.33. So this is the measured shim that I pulled out. It was 2.25. That gap needs to be smaller. So what I did is I put a larger shim in. I went from a 2.25 to a 2.3. These are the selections of shims. So as you can see, there's a big long selection to choose from. We just put in the correct shim, and we need the gap to be smaller, so we have to increase the size of the shim. So we're literally making this bucket, let's see, do I have a spare available? We make the bucket move up higher. Let's just take a quick look at a bucket. There we go. So that's the bucket. That piece right there is this piece right here. By putting a larger shim on there that rests on the valve, this bucket moves up closer to the underside of the cam. So this one was too big, so if we go 0.05 millimeters smaller, that makes that gap 0.23. That puts it right in the middle of the range, so we put a 2.3 in. Simple as that. This one's 0.3, that's too big. It was a 2.24 millimeter shim. The one I measured was 2.33, and that's of course how I measure them. So 7.07 millimeters bigger reduces that gap to 0.23, right within the spec, and so on and so forth. 0.25 increased the size of the shim by 0.05, reduces the gap by 0.05, so it makes it 0.23. 2.29 reduced by 0.11 puts it at 2.1. So it's a little small, it's little, but it's clearly inside the clearance. So we're good. These ones were good. I measured them just in case, but we didn't need to change anything. That one, yeah, could go a little smaller. So by putting a 2.52 in, we made it 0.03 smaller. 15 minus 3 is 12. Simple, very simple math. So, as I mentioned, front bank is all done, rear bank is done. So now, I know that my clearances are all good. And you may notice some spare fuel injectors. I noticed that one of them, when I was removing the throttle bodies, one of my injectors was broken, so I managed to get these used on eBay. And one of these was broken as well, actually. I think it was this one, yeah. So keep an eye out. It's this sort of thing, regular maintenance, that helps you find problems like this. So, yep, we're all ready to go. We're going to start reassembling and double check everything. Make sure we clean everything. Those are the upper injectors. Yeah, so we'll reassemble and clean and clean and clean. I've got some. These are actually the spark plugs from the old motor that exploded, but they've only done 2,000 miles, 2 and a bit thousand. They're in better shape than the spark plugs that were in my motor, so I might as well put them in. So, that's about it. Any questions? Leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching. Bye.